Live from the Civic Media Studios at WRCE in Richland Center, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Alba Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Alba.
Good morning across the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. I'm Todd Alba. We are live from the RC in Richland Center, WRCE News from the center, along with our producer and engineer, Mr. Aaron Zommers, back at the world headquarters on University Avenue in Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome into a Monday, the 15th of May, 2023, for another edition of the Todd Alba Show. Mr. Zommers, we have reached hour number 2.
That we have, and I still feel like I'm in a room with a cat.
Really, it's better. If anything, it's better this morning. But yeah, these allergies this year, I'm on Mucinex and Claritin, ibuprofen, and any other allergy or decongestant or anything else you can think of. I'm taking right now to get through this. Lots of orange juice over the weekend. So I think that's helped a little bit as well. But yeah, kind of got the crud going on. I think a lot of people do right now.
Yeah. I'm also a fan of Emergen-C, the vitamin C beverage drinks.
Yeah.
And
I've heard that's pretty good.
Yeah, they taste good. They're a little fizzy, but they're not overly carbonated. I know sometimes people don't like carbonated beverages.
Sure. Yeah.
And the other thing I really like to do, if I ever feel kind of sick or whatever, is to take a zinc lozenge. And I feel like that gives me a nice immune system boost.
Yeah, I know other people who are big fans of the zinc. So, yeah, it seems to work for a lot of people. Whatever you need to do out there, take care of yourselves. It is the allergy season, as they say. Also, update, we were talking last hour, went out and said hello to State Senator Howard Markline out in the lobby area out there over the break. He is here. He and State Representative Todd Novak going to be on our sister station, WRCO, FM 100.9 with Phil Nee, the morning show this morning. So, had a very nice time, a very not nice time, but a very polite. I said, well, Senator, how you doing? Senator Howard Markline. I said, how you doing? Oh, he said, fine. I said, welcome to come on down the hall if you want and to be on our show afterwards. Oh, he says, I got to get going. Not surprised, of course, by that response. But I was polite. He was polite, offered him a donut. Said, I brought donuts this morning. No, he said, I'm fine. So once again, I just want people to understand, I think it's only fair to say, Todd, because and rightly so, people say, well, so you go after Senator Markline, quite often. Why don't you ever have him on so he can defend himself, so he can tell his side of it? I said, absolutely. So I just like to make note on the air that once again, I personally, to his face, a sincere offer, and I said, quote, you're welcome to come on anytime. Would love to have you on, and I promise I won't be an a-hole. So I said, we'll have a great interview. He said, okay, well, thanks. I appreciate it. So, friendly, but I do not expect him to be on the show anytime soon. But we shall. But the offer has once again been extended. Our weather forecast this weather today should be extended throughout the entire season, as far as I'm concerned. It's a beautiful day. Here is your forecast, things you need to know for a Monday, May 15th, 2023. Weather forecast here in the southwest Wisconsin. Richland Center, patchy fog this morning for WRCE. Mostly sunny in the afternoon. It looks on as we look out our beautiful window here at RCE. Most of the fog has lifted. A high of 71. Today in the driftless area. Tomorrow, mostly clear, a high of making a low tonight of 45. And then for tomorrow, Tuesday, sunny, a chance of showers in the afternoon, a very slight chance, says Kara Foster, but nonetheless, a chance tomorrow in the afternoon, a high of 80 degrees. Up in Wausau, WXCO, Bull Falls, Radioland, sunny skies this morning, a high of 72 throughout the day. Clear skies tonight, a low of 49, and tomorrow, Tuesday, mostly sunny, and a high of 75. Over in Amory, WLAK, Lake Air Radio, patchy fog, sunny skies in the afternoon, a high of 72. Then for tonight, clear skies, a low of 51. And for tomorrow, Tuesday, sunny skies and a high of 75 degrees. Again, wherever you're doing today, enjoy that nice weather. It looks like next 3 days, beautiful weather on tap across the state of Wisconsin. Phone call. We have a phone call right now, Mr. Zommers. Go ahead and let us know what you've got going on.
We have Jeff Perry.
Oh, very good. Mr. Perry, welcome into the program. It is Monday, May 15th. Mr. Perry, what do you got for us this morning?
Well, I have a plan, Todd, for you.
Well, I always enjoy a plan.
It's kind of crazy, but it just might work.
Right.
So to get Howard on the show, you dress up like Vicky McKenna.
The problem is she has a... Well, go ahead.
It would be like in the old cartoons when Bugs Bunny would dress up to fool Elmer Fudd, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Not a bad. She has more hair than I do, for one thing. Also, she has a better beard. But other than that, that's terrible.
I did not think of that.
But no, it's a possibility. We asked. We're sincere. Look, it was a very polite cover. It was Richland Center polite out in the hallways. So,
and also, and this is not a joke. I have been reading articles about a new COVID variant that mimics allergy symptoms. So maybe
get out of town. Are you serious?
Maybe get tested. I'm very serious. Yeah. So maybe get tested and just make sure that it really is allergies, because apparently that's a thing, and apparently it's not the greatest thing to experience. So.
Well, thank you for that downer, Mr. Perry. I'll be.
That's what I'm here for.
Wow, that's actually news you can use. I had not heard that. And also, all right, now I'm going to check this out. Thank you for that. Both
it was
the
in the
joke
State
and the
Journal
news.
Not too long ago. Yeah.
All right, we'll check it out. Thank you, Jeff Perry. Have a great day. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Got a break. Back with more news you need to know after this. This is the Todd Albull Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Get along down the road. We got a long, long way to go. Scared to live, scared to die. We ain't perfect, but we try. Get along while we can. Always give love the upper hand. Paint a wall, learn to dance. Call your mom, buy a book, drink a beer, sing a song, make a friend. Can't we all get along?
Welcome back to the Todd Albull Show on the Civic Media Radio Network, along with Mr. Aaron Zommers, our producer and engineer, on a Monday, the 15th of May, 2023. Kenny Chesney, saying it all right there. Great advice for Mother's Day weekend. Call your mom if you weren't able to be with her, and just try to get along. That's what we're trying to do. We appreciate our listeners more than you could possibly know. Listeners like Janet in Bull Falls, Radio Land, WXCO up in Wausau, listening to us this morning. Janet, we appreciate you listening to us and sending this in via email this morning. Heard our take on Memorial Day last hour, and the fact that it disturbs me that people choose to advertise Memorial Day sales. I just don't think it's appropriate. One day out of the year where you should be honoring those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and yet businesses want to use that as a sale day, quote unquote. Janet sends us this morning from the history from history.com, part of the History Channel, an article entitled, "One of the earliest Memorial Day ceremonies was held by freed African Americans. At the close of the Civil War, people recently freed from slavery in Charleston honored fallen Union soldiers." Let's read just like the first paragraph here. Memorial Day was born out of necessity. After the American Civil War, a battered United States was faced with the task of burying and honoring the 600 to 800,000 Union and Confederate soldiers who had died in the single bloodiest military conflict in American history. The first national commemoration of Memorial Day was held in Arlington National Cemetery on May 30th, 1868, where both Union and Confederate soldiers are buried. And it goes on to talk about several towns and cities across America claim to have observed their own earlier versions of Memorial Day or Decoration Day as early as 1866, pardon me. The earlier name was derived from the fact that decorating graves remains a central activity to Memorial Day. But it wasn't until a remarkable discovery in a dusty Harvard University archive in the late 1990s that historians learned about Memorial Day commemoration organized by a group of Black people freed from enslavement less than a month after the Confederacy surrendered in 1865. Back in 1996, David Blight, a professor of the American history of Yale University, was researching a book on the Civil War when he had one of those once-in-a-career eureka moments. A curator at Harvard's Houghton Library asked if he wanted to look through 2 boxes of unsorted material. There was a box labeled First Decoration Day, he remembers, still amazed at his good fortune. And inside, he says, on a piece of cardboard was a narrative handwritten by an old veteran, plus a date referencing the article in the New York Times. That narrative told the essence of the story that I ended up telling in my book of this on this march on the racetrack in 1865. The racetrack in question was the Washington Race Course and Jockey Club in Charleston, South Carolina, where more than 260 Union soldiers died from disease and exposure while being held in the racetrack's open-air infield. Their bodies were hastily buried in a mass grave behind the grandstands. When Charleston fell and Confederate troops evacuated the badly damaged city, those freed from enslavement remained. One of the first things those emancipated men and women did was to give the fallen Union prisoners a proper burial. They exhumed the mass grave and reinterred the bodies in a new cemetery with a tall whitewashed fence inscribed with the words, Martyrs of the Racecourse. Wow, kind of gives me chills, quite frankly. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what it would be like to unearth and reinturn bodies of a mass grave, to sort them out individually, and then create new graves for each one? Incredible. Newly freed Americans, Black people in this country, helping out fallen Union soldiers on one of the very first Memorial Days, or as they said then, back then, Decoration Day. You can find this article at history.com, called One of the Earliest Memorial Day Ceremonies Was Held by Freed African Americans, at history.com. We thank Janet up at WXCO Bullballs Radio for sending us that great article. I'll read more of it, maybe bring it more of it to you as well. Just another example of why we should not be using that day, Memorial Day, as a day to make money off of, to have sales and whatnot. We'd love to hear from you. Always welcome to email us as well, or certainly call us 715-388-7155. Again, area code 715-388-7155. Couple of news headlines for you at this hour. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky arrived in the United Kingdom today to meet with Prime Minister Sunak, days after the UK delivered multiple Storm Shadow cruise missiles to Kyiv. The two leaders are set to discuss the need for urgent support for the country as Ukraine builds momentum for its highly anticipated counteroffensive against Russian forces. Vice Media filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy today to facilitate the sale of the company and safeguard its future, according to court documents. A statement from the struggling media group. A group of creditors made a conditional bid for substantially all of the company's assets, Vice said. The leaders have agreed to provide more than $225 million and would assume significant liabilities upon closing of the deal. Turkey's presidential election appears to be heading towards a runoff as preliminary results showed President Erdogan failed to secure 50% of the votes cast to decisively extend his 20-year rule. After millions of people voted and more than 97% of the vote counted, a state-run news agency reported Erdogan had 49.34% of the votes compared with 44.99% for his main opponent, meaning neither could claim an outright bid. President Joe Biden is expected to meet tomorrow with congressional leaders on the debt ceiling following productive, quote-unquote, staff-level negotiations over the weekend, according to two sources familiar with the situation, as the U.S. barrels toward a deadline that could come as soon as June 1. Negotiators have been able to pinpoint some areas in which congressional staff and the White House can find common ground, including revising the permitting process, rescinding unspent COVID-19 relief funds, and potentially cutting spending. Biden and the top four congressional leaders, including House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, held talks on the debt limit last week, but a path forward was still unclear among key sticking points in negotiations. And 42 million. That's how many Americans are expected to travel at least 50 miles from home over Memorial Day weekend, according to a new AAA forecast. The holiday, which falls on May 29th, could cause a substantially high level of airport congestion not seen since 2005, according to the report. I also have a substantial level of congestion, but a completely different kind on this Monday. And thanks for bearing with us. Time now here at the Civic Media Radio Network at 9:24. It's not fantastic. I was just about to say 9:23, and as I was saying it, boom, changed to 9:24. Gail King and I share that together. We love it when it does that, right? When you call it the time. Pretty much, I don't share Gail's talent. I don't share Gail's fame. I certainly don't share Gail's fortune. But I do share the fact that I love it when the time changes just as you start telling the time. Hitherto unknown fact. Here's the question I want to talk about this hour. We've heard this a lot. And one of the things I love about getting outside of Madison, I love that. I love living in Madison. You're not going to hear me be a Madison hater at all. But one of the real benefits of getting outside of Madison is you listen to all these different viewpoints. And in the state of Wisconsin, another reason I love that Kenny Chesney song, Can't We All Just Get Along? You know, the point is that we're all different in many ways. Politically different, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, what have you. We're faith differences, whether you're Christian or Muslim or Hindu or Jewish or no faith at all. Economic, social classes. We have rural, we have urban, we have suburban. We have north, south, central, east, west. All these different things. And if you always stay in the same city, the same spot, you kind of miss out a little bit, right? So it's helpful to get out and hear other voices. And so I was in Richland Center this weekend. I was in Milwaukee this weekend and at Madison. And here's something I'm hearing on the street in restaurants around town is that there are a lot of folks, and understandably so, let me say, understandably so, who are confused about this whole issue of immigration, migration. A lot of folks call it, quote unquote, illegal immigration. And I get it, all right? I just want to acknowledge that straight up. I get it. Because if all you do is listen to the news, whether it's Fox News or even other news channels, a lot of this is ratings driven, right? We talked about that last week. A network that I've long since thought of highly, CNN, took a big hit in my book last week when they put the Trumpster on for this so-called town hall meeting, which was nothing more than a propaganda piece for an hour and 10 minutes. And so, you know, Fox News does it, CNN's do it a little bit as well. MSNBC does it on the other side. It's all about ratings. All about ginning us up to get us to watch, to get us to listen, to get us to read, to get us to click, clickbait. And good, calm news, turns out, doesn't really get us to click, watch, or listen. And so what people like to emphasize is, oh my goodness gracious, how bad everything is. Button down the hatches, lock your daughters up in the attic. The illegals are coming to get us. That's the message they try to tell you. And it gets everybody all nervous. So I get it. That's the point. I get it why people have this anti-immigration stance. And so I wanted to spend a little time on this morning was to walk us through this. As someone who spent nearly 5 years working on immigration issues for a United States congressman here in Wisconsin, and spent a lot of time with the Immigration and Naturalization Service, as it was called then, in Milwaukee and in Washington. As someone who has spent time at a U.S. embassy in Central America, in El Salvador, meeting with the U.S. ambassador, meeting with the U.S. Charge d'Affaires, meeting with the U.S. Head of immigration at the U.S. embassy in San Salvador, I don't say that stuff to brag. I'm just saying, it's fair. Again, it's fair for those who don't know me to say, well, what does this Yahoo Todd know? He's just a radio talk show host. I tell you those things simply to say that's my perspective. That's my context, that I actually know a little something about this. I've had some experience. I've been to El Salvador 39 times over 25 plus years. So that's what I bring to the table here. And so what I'm about to tell you after we come back, I know something a little bit about. Back after this on the Civic Media.
Esas salvadoreñas, las mujeres más lindas de este mundo. ¡Ay! Oh.
Welcome back to the Todd Alba Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Just keep this going, Mr. Sommers. You can just keep this going all morning long.
I would certainly like to.
Que me han robado el corazón, tanta boquita para besar, y yo no sé a quién amar. Esas hembras con su caminar me hacen delirar. Son rosas de un
All cumbias all morning long on the Civic Media Radio Network. Fantastic music from the fantastic country of El Salvador with fantastic people, the Salvadoreños. Where did you find that? Nicely done.
That is, Salvadoreña by Los Hermanos Flores.
Yes.
I just looked up music from El Salvador, and this is one thing that came up. I listened to a few things, and this was very good.
That's very. In fact, here I'm bringing up my phone. There's a great album. It's called Lo Mejor de El Salvador. and of course, the great thing is there's a lot of Spanglish, Spanish and English together. A lot of Spanglish in El Salvador, and so the Spanglish title is El Super Show Guanaco. Guanaco
Nice.
is a slang term for Salvadorans in El Salvador, and so it's called El Super Show Guanaco El Salvador. That's why. See, if only I could be a broadcaster in El. If I was fluent in Spanish instead of my bad Spanish. If I were fluent in Spanish, Mr. Sommers, I'd take this show to El Salvador, baby. I mean,
you still could.
Down there. Well, yeah, sure, but I wouldn't sound very good. But now a lot of their radio announcers down there get the very announcer voice, like El Salvador, El Super Show, aquí. En la mañana, a las 8 de la mañana, El Salvador, El Todd Alba Show on Civic Media.
Yeah, there's
it's that very resonant broadcaster voice, right?
There used to be a Latino radio station in Manitowoc that I listened to all the time, and their announcers were like that too. Yeah,
it's very much that persona. You have to have the persona for a Spanish radio announcer. I do not have that persona. I'm just a simple kid from Richland Center, for crying out loud, and happy to be so. But yeah, great music, Mr. Sommers. Oh my goodness gracious, that's fantastic. Talking this morning, welcome back to the show. Talking this half hour on Title 42 ending, the border, what's happening there, and why this huge problem. I had to take a breath for a second because I don't want to say something that's not true or get myself in trouble. There's still a concern. There's still a crisis at the border, all right? I don't want to minimize them. Jeez, hiccup, I'm sorry. I do not want to minimize that. But Republicans are trying to make this sound like it's all falling apart, like, oh my gosh, we're being overrun here. And the point is that all these fears have not materialized to this point. What are your feelings on immigration in this country? Do you think there's a problem? Do you think we should change the laws? Give us your viewpoint on immigration. 715-388-7155. Lines are open. Mr. Sommer is standing by. Again, 715-388-7155. 7155. We'd love to hear from you this morning on the subject of immigration. And some people might say, well, Todd, why are you spending this much time on immigration? Last time I checked, Wisconsin is not a border state. Let me tell you something. From my years working in the state capitol, the state senate, and also for a congressman here in Wisconsin, immigration is very much an issue in Wisconsin. The biggest issue isn't that there's too much or that we're, quote unquote, being overrun. The biggest issue is there is not enough. And you know where I heard that concern from the most? The agriculture community. Because again, in this country and in this state, getting very difficult to find people who are born here that want to work on dairy farms, that want to work on farms, period, for that matter. Very difficult to get people who want to work in orchards, in vineyards, in practically any agricultural outside job whatsoever. Also, we talked about Wisconsin Dells. There is now a full-time program in the Dells where they go overseas, both to Europe and to South America, to recruit young people to come and work for 6 months at a time in Wisconsin Dells. You know, Noah's Ark, Kalahari, the Wilderness, all the rest of them up there in the Wisconsin Dells that you like to go to during the summer, they're gearing up, you know. Big opening weekend. As we talked, Memorial Day weekend is the big weekend, start of the summer up there in the Dells. You would not be able to go and enjoy that with your family if it was not for immigration. If it were not for people coming from other countries to work there. Because they can't find enough people here based in Wisconsin, let alone the United States, who want those jobs. We would not be able to eat apples, have milk, have most of our ag products if it wasn't for immigration. Some of that legal, and quite frankly, some of it undocumented. And that's the open secret, you understand? That's the open secret that I'm talking about. Is that when I was working both in the state capitol and in Congress for Republicans, now a former Republican since 2011, but when I was working for Republican state and federal legislators, I had other Republican constituents, agriculture Republicans, call me and say on the phone, Todd, we got to do something. You got to help. They got to change these immigration laws to make it easier to get people here legally because we can't get enough workers. We can't find kids. Local Wisconsin kids will do these jobs. And that's the secret. Is that both parties know this. But neither party really wants to go out there and have the chutzpah to do something about it. They don't want to expend the political capital. And yes, currently and historically, the side or the party that has been the most hateful, the most mean-spirited, and has used immigration as a political tool the most have been the Republicans. No doubt about it. A lot of misinformation. We're going to talk about some of that this hour. But also, let's not forget, and let's be truthful about this, and let's put it out there, that Democrats, as recently as up in 2020, don't forget, Democrats controlled both houses of Congress and the presidency. And did they do anything meaningful in election reform and in immigration reform? No. And that's what infuriates me. And look, I get it. I worked in both the state legislature and the United States Congress. I am keenly aware of how difficult it is to herd cats. All right? And that's what it's like, particularly with tight majorities. When you don't have a big majority, when you have only 1 or 2 votes, a majority in the Senate, and 10 or 12 majority in the House out in Congress, you know, when you have a 1-seat majority in the Senate, everybody wants to be the majority leader. Because they all say, well, you know, if I don't go along with it, not going to happen. True. And there are factions and fractions in the Democratic Party, just like there are in the Republican Party. I get it. But we cannot have an honest and thoughtful debate and discussion about immigration if all we want to do is completely point the finger at the Republican side of the aisle. Democrats have culpability here because they had 2 years to fix it. They had 2 years to take care of election reform and help protect our elections in this country. And they had 2 years to do something about immigration reform. And they took a powder on both. So let's just be honest about that. Because as I've said before on this show, based on experience on the ground in embassies in Central America, on the ground talking to people inside the then immigration, naturalization immigration system, there are two key problems, two main reasons that we are at where we're at in this country on immigration. Number one, the conditions in home countries. Central America, South America, the Caribbean in particular. That they don't have the same law. There is a reason people still want to come here. As messed up and crazy as our country may be, it's still the best hope on earth. And I know there's people that will scoff at that and go right ahead. But for my money, I still believe in American exceptionalism. I still believe, and you want to know why I believe that? Because I've talked to so many people and still have friends around this globe. You'll remember early on in this program, we had Christian Jensen, former foreign minister for Denmark. Basically, their Secretary of State for, not basically, it is the Secretary of State for Denmark. Member of Parliament. He's traveled all over the world, met with Putin's staff, met with terrible people like Assad, met with wonderful people, German chancellors, Africa, Central America, China, Japan. And he's told me, Todd, America is still, he said it on this program, America is still seen as what Reagan called it, the shining city on a hill. Whether we're all of that or not, whether we actually live up to that reputation, that's up for debate. But that is how we are seen around the world. So America is still the best place to come to. There is still a sense of free speech here. There is still a sense of equality, equity. Even though we know as Americans, we need to work to live up to those ideals, that is the ideal. And the point is that people in other countries know that. And they believe that. And in other countries, for speaking out against their government, for being who they are, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's women being mistreated, laws that do not protect women from being raped by their husbands. We've talked about the gangs in Central and South America that pick out your kid from the time they reach puberty and say, you know what? Your son had a really nice pair of blue Nike sneakers on. Wouldn't it be terrible if you got blood on those? So we're going to stop by once a month and we're going to collect $25 to make sure that your kid doesn't get blood on his tennis shoes. That's a real story, by the way. And that's repeated all over Central and South America. And the gangs are bribing parents to give them, and you say, well, what's $25? $25 is a heck of a lot of money to a lot of families in Central America. And they're being forced to give this for fear their kid is going to be kidnapped and forced into a gang. People say, why are there so many gangs in Central America? Part of the reason is that we exported that. When we sent out people from Los Angeles, when we deported people from Los Angeles, they had learned the gang system from us in Los Angeles. And we exported that back to El Salvador in Central America, and they started MS-13, the most dangerous gang in the world in El Salvador, based on us. There's one of our biggest exports, pardon me. Shouldn't we be proud of that? Not. We helped start that, all right? So joining a gang in Central and South America is not a choice always. It's either you do it, well, I guess it's a choice. Join a gang or be killed. That's your choice. All right? So that's problem number one. We have to be willing to invest foreign aid dollars to improve the conditions in the country. So you say, well, Todd, we got enough problems here in Wisconsin. Why are we going to export money to other countries to fix their problems? We'll take that question. We'll discuss it. Take your phone calls as well. Stay with us. This is the Todd Albaugh Show, live from Richland Center on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to the Todd Albaugh Show. It is now 9:50 on the Civic Media Radio Network, live from the RC Richland Center studios here. Along with Mr. Aaron Zommers, our producer and engineer, on the excellent Salvadoran cumbias this morning. Appreciate that, Mr. Zommers. Nicely done.
We should do that more often.
We really should do that more often. Boy, if you want a great night is going to like a dance. And they're not fancy dances. Although Central Americans, it is changing, but Central Americans tend to dress up more for even a casual dance than we do here. Go to like a nice little beachside dance with cumbias blaring. And let me tell you, they do play the music very, very loud down there. But a little cumbias blaring, a Pilsner, an ocean breeze, can't beat it. Fantastic evening. Have a pupusa, a little cortido, salsa de tomate, and a quesadilla, and you are set. You're set for the evening. Talking about immigration, welcoming your phone calls as well, 715-388-7155. Join us. Talk to us, 715-388-7155. Discussing the end of Title 42 at the border, what it means for America, what it means for us in Wisconsin, and what's causing it all. What are your feelings on immigration? 715-388-7155. Again, welcome your calls at 715-388-7155. So before the break, talking about two main reasons based on my experience, both in working for a Republican congressman, and a Republican state senator, having been to Central America, to El Salvador, met with ambassadors, Charge d'Affaires, heads of immigration, stood in line. Nobody knew, particularly other than the people I was with, that I was an American because I didn't reveal my bad Spanish. And based on my own experience and perspective, I said two main reasons we are in this situation. One are the conditions in said countries and the inability thus far for the United States to significantly help out in the country. Ron Johnson, U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, Wisconsin, went down to El Salvador a few years back. I don't have the story in front of me, but basically he said, we need to build more resorts, and then people will just work there. And that's how we fix illegal immigration. Well, get a clue, Ron. Because I've been to a couple of those seaside resorts, and they're nice, and they do employ people. The problem is in Central America is transportation. A lot of people don't have their own transportation. And public transportation in most places, or a lot of places, isn't great. They basically take a school bus from town to town. And it's very hard to get, if you live 50, 60 miles away, to get to a coastal town to get a job. It's a very simplistic American way of looking at how to solve the problems there.
Also, again, Ron Johnson says that I don't know why warming globes wouldn't be comforting. Talking about climate change and how it doesn't matter because in Wisconsin, shouldn't we be comforted by the rising temperature? Fewer people will die here. and not caring at all about what happens in Central America. So if your resort
you're right.
is too hot and people are dying, then you can't. Then that doesn't work.
You're right. Sadly, you are right. But it goes, so in El Salvador is a country I know best because that's the place I've been 39 times. And I'll say this, the new president or newer president now, I believe it is 30 year, Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, you've heard me talking to me, he is essentially an authoritarian leader now. But I'll say this, he has actually done real things for the Salvadoran people. He's improved infrastructure, including roads and bridges, sewage. He's giving more money back to the people. Again, you could talk about the violation of humanitarian rights, but he's locked up a lot of these gang people and members. And so conditions, from what I've been told, I haven't been there since his election, but from what I've been told, conditions have greatly improved in El Salvador. And guess what? On the latest numbers over the last couple, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, guess which Central American country has seen their numbers go down in terms of trying to get across the U.S. border illegally? El Salvador. Fewer Salvadorans are trying to get into the United States illegally because the conditions in El Salvador have improved. I can't say they haven't. They have. That just proves what I'm telling you. My point, my theory, is that if we as the United States would invest more money in improving the conditions in Central and South America and Mexico, we'd have fewer people that want to come here illegally. All right? Now, Nayib Bukele's doing it by being friendly with the Chinese. And China's investing millions of dollars in El Salvador. I believe we'd be smart if we would take some of the U.S. money, which, of course, former Republican Wisconsin U.S. Senator Bob Caston did back in the 80s, took some of the money from defense, put it into USAID in the State Department, and created these Central American scholarship programs I've talked about before, including the ones here at the campus of Richland Center. Great investment, great return on investment to improve democracy. So, number one, we have to be willing as a country to say, look, we're going to improve the conditions in these other countries so that they'll be happy there and safe and free and not want to come here illegally. Number two, we have to be willing to work in a bipartisan manner in this country for real immigration reform. Real immigration reform. A lot of people say, well, why do people come here illegally? They should be able to wait. What people don't understand, and I get it, I've been fortunate to have these unique experiences. Most people haven't. I've seen this firsthand. I'm not an expert on immigration anymore. One time I was. The laws have changed since I worked in that realm. It takes years, if not decades sometimes, for a person to immigrate to the United States legally. Our immigration system here is broken. It is inconsistent. We do a terrible job of the United States in communicating our immigration policies to foreign countries. There's not enough money for staff, both here in the immigration system and in foreign embassies. There's not enough money to fund these programs to process. Let me tell you this story quick. Oh, we're running out of time. I'll tell it until we come back in the next hour. I'm going to tell you exactly how a United States congressman, my former boss, tried to employ a foreign worker. INS lost the applications not once, not twice, but 3 times. I'll tell you the story on the other side. This is the Todd Albaugh Show.